Good morning. How's everyone doing? Come on. How's everyone doing? All right. Thank you. I'm going to get that out of a visual block. Well, thank you, Dr. Blondin. It's always great to be here with you today. Hello to everyone in this totally filled room and those of you in the overflow rooms. This has been a really good year. It's been a crazy year. It's been an insane year. I'm going to give you a quick summary. Well, since I last saw you, your institutions have received millions of dollars of grants. I want you to know we read that all the time, and we're very proud for you. On the other side, more schools have closed and merged. There has been an elevated interest, if not an absolute obsession, about higher education with the public, opinion leaders, parents, students, anybody who is interested or in some cases knows how to do our jobs better than we do. College and students have been left hanging with the FAFSA fiasco as far as federal financial aid. Accreditation is in the news. Imagine this, we're even mentioned in political speeches. We have every level from the state to the presidential election, people talking about accreditation. It was fun to be low on the radar screen. There are a flurry of proposed, unpassed, and some passed legislation that impact higher education more than ever. Within the triad of the states, the federal government, and accreditation, well, as far as who's responsible for what, for those of you who remember Abbott and Costello, it kind of feels like who's on first most of the time. And so much more. On a personal note, well, I have a new granddaughter Corey, thank you very much, Addie born in October. And I have a new obsession with the New York Times spelling bee. I sadly must admit I wait until 2 a.m. if I'm up a little late to play it because that's when it drops Central Time here. I have a new rabbit hole to climb into when I can't sleep, which is beyond the millions of cat videos that I have watched over the years, and that's AI, artificial intelligence, and trying to find things on AI or do images. I will say I got 100% of the Oscar predictions correct this year. And finally, one of the most inspiring speeches I heard the entire year was embedded in a movie about a Mattel toy doll. It's been quite a year. First thing I would like to do in welcoming you is to give great appreciation to the committee and the people who put this together. Let's take a moment to thank them for their very hard work. So let me give you a little insight into the conference at a glance. The first thing I want to do is recognize that we have 3 of our fellow, formerly known as regional, now institutional accrediting bodies here with us today. We have NECHI, the New England Commission, Middle States, and SAC COC. So I don't know if you're in the room, but I just wanted to welcome all of you. And if you're a first-time attendee, how many of you are first-time attendees? Raise your hand. Welcome. There are things in the program that give you guidance as to some of the best sessions for those who are attending for the first time. Well, yesterday, some of you saw Eric Liu. So we'll talk about the keynote speakers. He spoke yesterday in a very provocative conversation about civic engagement and citizenship. And tomorrow, Daniel Susskind will be speaking, and he's from the King's College of London, economics, which is actually pretty cool. And he's speaking on education and training. And what I'd like to point out is that we also have a lot of really excellent featured speakers. I'm going to tell you their organizations are really what they're talking about versus names because it's in your program. Well, today there's a workshop on system level planning. And then tomorrow there's a workshop on how presidents and boards can work together for student success. When you get to the next group, we have John Fanspith, I will mention his name. He's from the American Council on Education. I'll tell you a quick story. Yesterday, when I spoke to the presidents, I said, when John comes, he's going to be very depressing. So, of course, in the afternoon, he gets up there and he's going to talk about what's going on in D.C. And he said, I heard Barbara said I'm going to be very depressing. And I was right. So he proved me right. So I would just say that, yes, it's a little insane, but it's good to know about it. So I encourage you, if you're available, to attend. Then we also will have conversations on developing a data strategy tomorrow, on a workshop about evidence and quality improvement on Monday. And then we have coming on Monday again another speaker on the cost of exclusion and the privileged class and the privileged poor. That's important. And then we're going to find out about academic freedom on Tuesday. That's a keynote speech. And finally, a workshop on encouraging cross-functional support for holistic student outcomes. So we're pretty excited about all the kinds of things that are coming, but we have some special sessions that I'd like to talk about. And one of our special sessions is on your favorite topic, the criteria for accreditation. And you will see that we have new criteria. I'll discuss that a little later. And we encourage you to go to those listening sessions. We have received some written input, received a lot of input yesterday, mostly very supportive, but some really good ideas at the President's Workshop. And so please do consider that. And then we have listening sessions on Evolve, our current plan, but most importantly, time is ready to plan for the next one, which would start in 2025. Depending on our progress, it might be fall, it might be spring. So we'll see how that's going. So we'd love to hear, what do you think HLC should be doing next? And then the Credential Lab, which is a project I'll explain, has a group where they have listening sessions, they have an opportunity to do meet and greets, they're going to tell you about their work. So it's really an exciting project. And then we have special sessions just for our ALOs. We had good sessions yesterday for peer reviewers. And the Academy Accreditation Share Fair, as always, is available. So I want to talk about the environment a little bit and see if you notice, I don't know if you can see because it's hard to get it on a camera, but can you see anything different about my... That's a board member who knew ahead of time. I came to the office and I had silver sneakers on one day, and I was really comfortable because when you commute or when you're walking around a lot, you see on the train, it's very interesting to see the women with the 4-inch heels in their bags or carrying them, and then they have sneakers on. And I said, well, I'm comfortable. And I said in executive leadership meeting, I said, boy, it'd be nice if we could wear that at the conference. And Marla Morgan, our attorney, she lit up, absolutely lit up. Well, why couldn't we? So, yes, there's a pun on silver sneakers for those of you who understand the athletic interpretation of that. But it just so happens that everyone from HLC now has permission, and some board members are doing this too. Be comfortable. You're walking a lot. With due respect and love to the Hyatt, there are escalator problems in one area, and so just bring your, be comfortable. So I wanted to tell you about the silver sneakers so you wouldn't think we were just out drinking late last night, and I forgot to change. The next thing I want to talk about is important, and that's Evolve, our strategic plan, and the progress that we've made on each area. Well, for the vision area, this is the group that has the lens to the future. So when we talk about that, it's really important. But first, we want to talk about equity. So we have an overarching group I'll get back to, but on equity, you can see that equity is really important to us, and we continue to look at it in many different ways. But as we're working on the credential project, equity is access, because much of higher education, as you know, there are serious equity gaps. But when you talk about short-term credentials, the world shifts a little bit there. And there's sometimes a little greater opportunity. So there's a lot of work being done on this. We never tell anybody what equity means for you or your campus. We're talking about in a generic, general sense. And the criteria for accreditation reflects that as well. But you'll be excited as you look at the criteria to see it's about your institution, your mission. It's not about HLC. So the next thing that we have is we talk about vision. And again, this vision committee looks to tie the whole thing together and what our future is. And when we talk today about such things as a credential lab, that vision came up years ago through external groups that were helping us and through our own strategic planning. And then eventually we took the idea and we went with it. What about outcomes? Well, outcomes is a pretty hot topic, as you know. And in today's world, we are hearing from a lot of folks about the importance of outcomes. It's important to us too. And we don't want to be driven externally. We want to do what's best for our institutions, your students, our members. So starting in 2024, we're going to do something that is pretty traditional, actually. It will be a multi-phase project looking at outcomes, at which point we're going to use iPads, and we're going to look at graduation complete rates over time. Additionally, with outcomes, we are going into moving it in stages so it's not all at once. By using the iPad's data, which is not perfect, but it's gotten better, then we can move on to saying, okay, what other kinds of things should we be looking at? Because I think we all know graduation rate is by far not the only determinant of your student's success. So other things we will be doing down the line will be to help you, work with you to help us identify the appropriate measures for outcomes. And what does it really mean? And as you look at the criteria, and I'll say it over and over again, according to your mission. So we will take a look at that and we will take it into account as we do all this work. We want to do some follow-up then and likely move on to areas that are particularly important to external stakeholders, the kinds of things that they want to find out about. And what would that be? Well, of course, as you move into that, the final thing that we're looking at with that transparency is to look at possibility of job placement and income and debt. So in outcomes, the goal is really just to identify where there might be some areas of concerns and what the opportunities are. I'll tell you, when I'm in DC and folks say to me, every institution should have, and they give a number of a graduation completion rate, I cannot forget my 15 plus years in community colleges and say, okay, so let me get this straight. You want the selective institutions with selective admission and the community colleges to have the same graduation rate. Well, I think we're trying to make a good argument with that, but it's up to us. It's up to us and it's up to you. So how can we really tell? Who are your peer institutions? What can you learn from them? Where do you stand with those that are actually most like you versus different from you? This will happen over time. There will be a session on this on Monday, and you'll hear more about it directly from the people in charge, okay? So let's talk now about leadership. Well, gosh, leadership is really important. We integrate it into what we do every day, what we're learning about leadership. We try to look at continuous improvement for HLC, each of the employees, and all the work that we're doing. We're developing a resource library that you'll be able to go to in case you want to read some more about leadership. And importantly, we've gotten out there a little bit, and we've done some leading by example. I realize that's out of order of the slide, but it doesn't really matter. And the point is, we've done some blogs. We use our leaflet for you. Dr. Blondin and I were in a couple blogs, not blogs, podcasts. I've got to be cool and get the right term, so podcasts. And in those podcasts, Clark State had a student there. And I have to tell you, I listened to, it was taped separately from when we did ours together, and then it was blended. And I thought, this student is why we're here. She said so many magnificent things about Clark State. One thing that particularly stood out is Clark State meets the students where they are. And she talked about the impact and coming from far away and trying to navigate the system and how helpful. So we try to get out there, conferences, etc. But we also try to, in our leadership, show your leadership and frequently use examples of our campuses. Now let's talk about value. The group that's working on value did a lot of really good training for the accreditation liaisons. They're working on that work. They're continuing their thought leadership overall with national experts. We try to really stay on top of what's going on. You have the trends. And then we also launched Canopy Portal, which should make life a lot easier for you. I will say, candidly, everything we're doing to make your life easier would be made harder if the negotiated rulemaking recommendations go through. So I really want to call to your attention the importance of knowing what the department will be putting out with negotiated rulemaking and make sure that your institution speaks up. I spoke to your presidents about that yesterday, and we'll talk about it more a little later. So we have thought leadership with national experts. We do a lot of things in the value area. We've expanded SparkQ, which you all use. So I would like to point out that in the value area, going all the way back to our first strategic plan, not the current one, V was for value to members in VISTA. So we continue to try to do what we can to listen to our members and adapt accordingly. So with all of that, let's get to engagement. Well, we tell your story. We tell your story all the time. We use you as examples. I will tell you that anytime you make the press, good or bad, we read it. And I have to tell you, every time it's good, we're so excited. We talk about it around the office. We'll say, did you hear that Institution X got a grant to do the following? That they're excited about how their accreditation turned out. So here's an article. And we really try to position our institutions nationally on a regular basis. So engagement is really important. But your core business with HLC, the criteria for accreditation. So let's talk about that a little bit as far as what we're doing with the criteria for accreditation. You're going to find that there are sessions here where you can give your input. And this is a definite speak now or forever hold your peace, right? What we did basically is we took the idea of recognizing you have various and differing missions. We knew that, but we are really emphasizing that. So with each criterion, and we've gone to 4, we've done some merging, exactly what you asked for in some of these. And what we did is underneath it says, according to your mission. According to your mission, each time. And you will find that there wasn't a great love for the subcomponents, so they are out. But they will be, it can all be explained in a companion guide that says evidence. So you'll hear more about it. Why didn't we get applause? You all want us to take the subcomponents out. Thank you. Thank you. And we know it can pose some challenges too, so that's why the listening sessions are important. So take a good look at those criteria, attend a listening session. There's some different opportunities. And now let's get to trends. What a year. Good year? Bad year? Crazy year? Okay, we all agree on that one for sure. I want to give you a quote by Isaac Asimov, and I want to talk about artificial intelligence first. It is change, continuing change, inevitable change that is the dominant factor in society today. No sensible decision can be made any longer without taking into account not only the world as it is, but the world as it will be. Artificial intelligence. Anybody have any idea when artificial intelligence might have started? 2000 to 2010, any guesses on that? Raise your hand. 2010 to 20? Post-2020? 1990s? 1980s? I'll make it easy, 1956. And I'm also going to share with you a term I learned in a program I'm in from Cornell on artificial intelligence, so I will not say blogs versus podcast, and I'll understand what I'm talking about. I don't know about the rest of you, but AI is so new to me that I decided I would have to study it a little bit on your behalf so I would understand what you're doing at your institutions and the possibilities and the challenges. AI winters. AI winters means that there were times that great ideas came up, but there was a long period of years in between before they were realized, the ideas. I started with ChatGPT. And in using ChatGPT, the first thing I did is I had someone who I work with in coaching, and she said that she wanted to take a course. What did I know about change management? And do I have any resources? And I said, okay, well, I'm not just going to give her a book. I'm going to suggest she go back to school because isn't that what we all do? So I went online. I found a good program. I told her about it. And she said, oh, okay, but does it have homework? I said, well, yeah. And she said, I'll have ChatGPT do that for me. So, okay, in coaching, you're not judgmental, right? So I have to it's by phone, but nevertheless, I'm like, so the former faculty member in me dealing with what you're all dealing with, I'm saying, is this good, is this bad, what can she get from it? So I said, well, Alyssa, you're supposed to actually talk about how this applies to your organization. How might that help you? That's a good general question. And eventually she realized she had to do it herself. But I thought, what are you all facing every day? And I won't look at you, Sam, my son, and say you would have loved ChatGPT in college because I was your bot at that time. But the idea is that you really have opportunities with it and you have challenges, as you know. So let me tell you some of the things that I've learned. In using ChatGPT, it's really just the basis of one thing. There's machine learning, deep learning, all kinds of things, algorithms. We got to that point, I said, I'm in trouble, I don't get algorithms. But I did learn that it's not always accurate. So I want to tell a story I told yesterday related to a dream I always have. And the president, some of them have had it too. I dream that I'm late for a test, okay? So I'm late for the test, and I don't finish the course. And therefore, they take away all my degrees. And I don't have the credentials that I need to have. Have any of you had any nerdy academic dreams like that? You are my children sitting among nerdy academics, so I just want to point that out. I would like to say that, okay, I'm going to check on ChatGPT a little bit about myself, and it goes back to the dream part. So I looked up my name. I didn't exist. I looked up my maiden name. I didn't exist. Okay, ChatGPT is new. My chat I call Ken for Ken Jennings, who knows everything because he won the most Jeopardy. And I go on and okay, no Barbara Gelman Danley. She doesn't exist. No Barbara Gelman. No anything with my name. And what ended up happening is I said, okay, when did Barbara Gelman Danley go to Syracuse University? We're really sorry. We have no Barbara Gelman Danley affiliated with Syracuse University. When did she go to Simmons College? Okay, it's Simmons University now. Let me try that. And then when this and when that. And guess what? I didn't have any of my degrees. But I did find out I worked at places I never had been. So I told Bill Pink yesterday I was his academic VP at Ferris State. Are any of you here from South Dakota? Apparently I was a president in your state. And I'm trying to get the correlation because I've been in South Dakota on the way to Wyoming, stopped off at Mount Rushmore. I don't think they knew that, so I'm not sure that's where that information came from. Anyone here from Kansas? Okay, so I went to a University of Kansas game when they played Syracuse, and I had a sign that said Sooners for Syracuse, and we almost got beat up. But that wasn't Kansas State, and I was president of Kansas State. So I've had a very impressive career. I just didn't live it. So I felt like, if any of you saw Back to the Future, I felt like the picture where he faded and everybody was fading in the picture. That is to say, you can use ChatGPT to help you generate good job descriptions and then edit from there, but don't hire somebody based on what you see on ChatGPT. And you can use it for interviews. As part of the Cornell course that I'm taking, we actually had bots interview a candidate for an IT job, and it was pretty fascinating. And some of the information can be very accurate, but it can be malicious, it can be inaccurate, and you just have to be careful. When it comes to machine learning, you're already using it. You've got, if you have clear facial identification on your phone or anything like that, you're already using a lot of different forms of AI. But I'm fascinated with it. I was particularly fascinated when I watched the video about Watson. Anybody know Watson beating Jeopardy? Anybody remember that? Oh, I can't be older than all of you. Come on. Okay, thank you very much. A board member remembers that. But Watson is an IBM computer that back in the 90s, I think, beat IBM and then, or beat Jeopardy. And it's happened later. IBM has done something recently with something called AlphaGo, where they beat Go, a very hard game, an international game, I believe, out of China. But have any of you ever seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? It is bizarre. It is a very bizarre movie. Very bizarre. But hell, the computer takes over, and a bunch of people die as a result of it, and then they unplug him, and very bizarre ending. Could that happen? All the people that are being interviewed and articles I'm reading say, yeah, well, maybe. Maybe. So AI is important, and what will it do that's great for your institution and what might be harmless? So let's talk about some of the other kinds of trends that have come up: teaching, learning, enrollment, and paradigm shifts. Well, there are older students. There are less students coming, 18 to 22-year-old. Online learning, which grew exponentially in COVID, is now becoming more commonplace. And more importantly, the students are saying, that was so convenient, that's how I want my education. And so faculty are shifting and learning and figuring out how to deal with that and maintaining the absolute best value you can get is an in-person classroom. I've been in distance learning for years, but it's still, in-person is just fabulous. But there's a lot of shifts going on in teaching and learning. The legacy admissions, that's now Supreme Court, and other kinds of rulings that have taken place. DEI, all those kinds of things are impacting the teaching and learning environment. What about outcomes and accountability? Well, I've mentioned that we're going to do more with outcomes, and that's important. But I do want to tell you that these slides are from AI. So when I put in outcomes, I got nothing that made any sense. And then I put in metrics that matter, and now you have something that's got a yardstick or ruler in it. So there's a couple on here. I want to see if you can guess what I actually asked ChatGPT, because it's really important what you ask. So there's been a lot on outcomes and accountability that has been discussed. It's really important. And I will tell you, one of the negotiated rulemaking areas would say accreditors will do outcomes. Initially, it almost outlined exactly what it was supposed to be, which is ironic because in the Higher Ed Act, it says the Department of Ed can't do that. Congress can't do that. It's not in the act. And we challenged them, and they said, well, we're not telling you what to do. We're telling you you need to do something. And I think that is a very loose interpretation of the Higher Ed Act. But that being said, we will need to set something up as these go through, and we wanted to anyway. So a lot of what came out of negotiated rulemaking made the presumption that you as institutions weren't doing what you were supposed to, so they had to tell you what to do. And same thing with accreditors. So outcomes is important because people really want to know the result of college. Another trend, and I really want you to guess what this is. Finances. Can anybody guess? Yay, demographic cliffs, right on. So that's, boy, I went back to 60s on that. But the idea is they put a building in cliffs that look like you're in either a beautiful area or Game of Thrones, and that's how they interpret it. But that slide alone brought me to a message from Ken, my bot, saying, Dear Barbara, we're very sorry. You've used up your 55 image generations for the day, because it took a long time to get there. Well, finances are really challenging. Some of the states have picked back up. For private institutions that are tuition dependent, it's been increasingly challenging, as you know. There's more competition. There's competition from outside of higher education. We are realizing, and it will continue until it fully peaks, a demographic cliff, less 18 to 22-year-olds, and therefore less younger students coming to campus. And actually, another teaching and learning problem is a readiness of students from COVID to come to college. And I imagine you've seen that because they lost time. And so they aren't as ready, some of them, as they would have been if it had been normal times. A lot more partnerships for shared services are taking place, and we think that's important and are addressing it. So enrollment numbers are improving as a whole, but it still is a challenge. When you read about long-term, large public universities within and outside of the HLC membership having mega cuts, mega millions of dollars that they have to cut out, you know there are financial challenges. So that's going to continue. However, new business models are opportunities to possibly change. Now, what this is are two institutions merging into one. It's okay for that. I gave up after 10 times, so I said this will work. But the idea is that institutions are coming up with different business models as to everything right down to one of my board members' favorite things, subscriptions, I can't say it, subscription services, where you go to different colleges and you get the best of what you can from each of those colleges or universities, and eventually you earn a degree and learner records are being developed, etc. Post-secondary institutions are partnering more and more strategically to co-design educational programs with folks outside of higher ed. There's a lot of restructuring, so I think you know there have been a lot of challenges in the business model area. Now, exponential growth in short-term credentials, we generated this, not AI. This is our new project, our new business unit ourselves, and that is the Credential Lab. The Credential Lab was put together to respond to two areas but two key areas. One, institutions that might want more training and help in getting into short-term credentials that are either standalone or could lead toward a degree, or how do you work with the outside external providers to know that they're high quality? So I want to just take a moment to put up some slides to call attention to the members of what we call the Credential Lab Advisory Board. I'm simply going to mention their locations. This is on our website. University of Chicago, Clark State College, the Education Design Lab, the Credential Engine, and this one I love, Jobs Ohio, which represents the organization that brings business to the state of Ohio. University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Center, the League for Innovation, the LinkedIn, that's pretty cool. And then we have representatives from the Association for Talent Development, and we're working with others that are not listed, but we have Dallas College, done a lot with credentials and certificates. Arizona State University, which is pretty far ahead in this area. We also have representation from Oklahoma City Community College, doing an awful lot with credentials and short-term certificates. Madison, UW-Madison Online, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I'm sorry, I'm sure that would be a problem back home. I said it the wrong way. And then representing the states, we have the Colorado Department of Higher Education. We have the former president of the University of Madison, Wisconsin system, who's doing work now with the Association of Governing Boards. And we have a healthcare representative from Siemens Healthineers, because healthcare is a disruptive field. And a lot has been learned about how they are redefining themselves and do change management. And then we also have the Burning Glass Institute, which is a data source. So there are a lot of really good folks on this, including WorkCred, including the Michigan Department of Labor, including all of those folks who are with Credential As You Go. And I think it's important to note you will see some within and some without of higher ed. We also have, in addition to the leadership board, the names are up here, and these are folks on our quality design team, a small group. We'll add a few more, but this is actually the group that's going to help us develop the metrics as to how do you look at the quality and perhaps say, this is at this level or that level, or it gets a badge or an endorsement, or HLC says you're great, whatever it is we're going to do. These people come within higher ed and outside. So credentials as a whole have grown exponentially. I can imagine that you read the Chronicle and Inside Higher Ed and any of those kinds of publications on a regular basis. And in so doing, you see that the growth of credentials is short-term certificates, certifications, et cetera, are now exceeding degrees completed. But they don't have to be mutually exclusive. The marketplace is demanding an ability to get a quick and high-quality education that may not be tied to a total four-year degree. But in our world, we hope it will be, so you can get both. I personally, and I say this every year, I don't have the interest necessarily in going back and getting another degree or time, or do I need it? So I go the short-term certificate or certification route to keep myself informed. And I think that's important for everybody. So how many of you are doing short-term certificates? How many of you are glad gainful employment's been delayed a few more months? So, yeah, really. So it's a little crazy in DC. So the idea of gainful employment is that there would be a lot of data you would need to show for certificates. But I think it's a good time to do that anyway. And I think that it's a great opportunity for your institutions to work alone, collaboratively with other institutions, et cetera. But the work that this group is doing is really exciting. It's gotten a lot of national attention. Two foundations, Lumina Foundation and ECMC, have given us generous grants. We're working with Strata Education in a partnership as far as teaching each other as we go along. So please stay in touch with us on this. It's a very important topic. Now, politics in higher ed. Wow. States. How many of your states have proposed legislation that has not passed yet related to higher education? How many of you are in states where it's passed? God bless. It's difficult. There's a lot out there. Some of it's good. Some of it is challenging. Some will challenge your values or the way you do business. We're a non-political organization, so we don't weigh in on what states do or should do. We have thoughts, personal thoughts, but when you open the Chronicle every day online, or you go into it online, and you see more dots on states for DEI tracking, where they're saying, one, either the state's taking money away, or two, you can't do it at all. Some institutions have changed the name from diversity, equity, and inclusion to something else, and I can't remember, but there's one state that's even tracking if you do that. This is a first step in external folks being very interested in higher education. Now, what you see here is pretty obvious. It's a Capitol building on an Ivy League campus. How many of you saw the presidents testify about anti-Semitism on campus or read about it? Well, initially I thought, okay, they're very well prepared. Harvard, MIT, Penn, they're well prepared. Then I thought, uh-oh, they're over-prepared. They're prepared by lawyers, no offense to lawyers, comms people, PR, et cetera. And in effect, they went right up to the edge of saying we are against any kind of bias against any group, not just anti-Semitism, and we will act when something happens, okay? So imagine if you did that with healthcare, your own health. that when I know I'm sick, then I'll go to the doctor versus going to the doctor every year. And so unfortunately, it did not come across well. And now many institutions are, the elite institutions in particular, I don't really love that term, but it kind of tells you what I'm talking about. They are being visited, they're having congressional investigations into how they're handling this. And then the public safety thing comes up as well. So politics as far as laws that are being sent to you, politics as far as Congress weighing in. Things aren't passing because there's disagreement. The one thing that's bipartisan is outcomes, just not how to do it from Congress. So there's an awful lot going on. We stay on top of it. What about free speech, speaking out, civility and safety on campus? I know cases personally where somebody is getting so harassed, and I feel bad for her, and I feel bad for the president who has to figure out what to do, who basically says, we'll wait until something happens. Well, that's not going to help her family. And I don't think it's any one group. If you are showing anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, that you're going to show other kinds of things. Everybody has a right to speak out. That's the virtue of higher education, every group, but it has to be safe. And I have great empathy for the presidents because it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult now to know exactly which line to walk. Do you listen to your lawyers? Do you listen to your communication staff? Do you listen to your students, your faculty, et cetera? Well, everybody, hopefully. But it's very, very difficult. So we all know the free speech, the historical free speech value of higher education is being tested. It's being tested quite frequently. And that's difficult. And part of that leaves you at your institutions within your classroom, I would imagine, wondering what's next, because some states are coming in and saying what should actually be in your curriculum. Last time I looked, you're the ones who have the subject matter expertise, and that's why you're in those positions. But it's difficult, and you need to fight that the best way possible and do what you can to help your students, because it's important that they see all perspectives. Now that might lead to the next one, which I spoke about a lot last year, mental health and stress. The students are stressed, the faculty are stressed. This continues. It's growing. It's a growing problem. And there's a lot of safety and security right now among the students. And really well-reputed institutions that, in fact, one of yours, Corey, that is being questioned for all the acts that are going on there with anti-Semitism. And it's the kind of thing that as a parent, and you say, well, my Muslim daughter, my Jewish son, my racially mixed kids, they're going to campus and they don't feel safe. Do you feel safe on your campuses? I hope you do. I really hope you do. But it's a difficult time now. It's the kind of thing where yesterday in the news, I'm in President's and we're getting, in 10 hours there's going to be a bombing. In 9 hours there's going to be a bombing. This is not a world we've all lived in. It's a different time for us. So it's challenging, and yet you have such an important role with the students in educating them, keeping them informed, and letting them speak out. Now, talent management. This is an aging professor running out of the library. I like that one. I have a library degree. Well, Ken doesn't think so, but I do. And I like this because you might feel like this someday. But just because of age, a lot of people are retiring. And what's happening is there aren't enough people necessarily to come in behind, or the hesitancy of the great environment of working at a college or university might be a little bit pressured now because some of these things that are in the press are going on. And it's important that we realize that we can have a lot of changes on our campuses. And a lot of people leaving for either their own reasons, for good reasons, but if they're leaving because they're stressed, you still have to fill those positions, and often that's a quick turnaround. So talent management is important, and I will tell you, again, you can use AI for job descriptions. And then you edit it yourself, and you can get some really good things from there and save yourself some time. Let's talk about accreditation in the triad. Well, this is where it's really very interesting, because kind of like that sometimes, we have the accreditors, the federal government, and the states. I will say in recent cases, we've worked very well together in some situations, others we don't. And what's going on here is the federal government, the Department of Ed, is under a lot of pressure. And what's going on with the federal financial aid was for good intent. The idea was make it easier. Okay, not send out 200,000 applications that have to now be retrieved because there were mistakes on them. And the fact that it's so delayed, how many of you are feeling pressure as to who your incoming fall class will be based on FAFSA? And for those we have some visitors from another country or two here, I would say FAFSA is financial aid. Stands for longer, but it's the federal financial aid. So in this case, what you have is how do we work together as the accreditors and as the states and the federal government. And what happens is right now the federal government's on silence related to negotiated rulemaking. And what happened with negotiated rulemaking, one area that would impact us is there's a proposal, and since consensus was not reached, it goes back to the department to put out a final, it's called NPRM. And the idea is with that, it has right in there that no more than half our board should be, initially it was executive officers. And one of our representatives suggested changing that, the negotiator, to presidents, not deans, vice presidents, et cetera. And when the term vice president was added, that now means our board has more than half that, and therefore somebody would have to leave because the federal government's telling us those most qualified who know the most about colleges and universities should not be too many of you on our board. They want more public members from the outside often. That's a very direct thing. What are they doing with negotiated rulemaking related to NC-SARA? Any of you following that? NC-SARA is a reciprocity agreement, was set up a number of years ago for the purpose of making your lives easier, that you would be able to go through NC-SARA, prove that you knew what you were doing with distance learning, your state was a member of NC-SARA, therefore you had mobility. Well, the proposals are to totally decimate their board as to who should be on it, but also for SARA itself, the reciprocity agreement, that if you had more than 500 students online in a state, you had to get their separate approval, which means those institutions that are very active in online learning will have to go both to NC-SARA, but really mostly to the states now. So it would decimate the reciprocity agreement. I strongly suggest that you study this and you speak up because the outcome will be chaotic for online learning. The other thing for accreditors that would impact you that you would not love is substantive change. If you had any kind of change that fell under that category, we would need to visit every one of the locations. So if you had a new program that also went for dual enrollment, et cetera, we'd have to go to all the high schools. And guess who pays for that? You do. So we are becoming more well-known for trying to have forms versus visits or all those kinds of things, very sophisticated technology, still very rigorous, and you can be proud of your membership accreditation, but the federal government is trying to put anchors on our feet, and it will impact you. So I strongly suggest you take a look at it. Well, the last trend I saved was leadership. I want to talk about leadership in particular. Leadership is really, really important. And the more we have turnover at our institutions and the time for presidencies are getting shorter, that's impacting the institution. If we have problems with the board, it impacts the institution. But what I really want to talk to you about now is leadership is not a title. So I want to talk to you about a particular giveaway that we will be providing. We're going to have a giveaway, and the only thing you need to do is fill out the evaluation form for this to enter for this session. And it's $3,000 for you to use as you would like on your campus for leadership, for professional development, for a single person, a group, a student, or group of students. That's it. And let us know how you're using it. So if you're interested, we want to give you a little bit to put toward leadership. And that's an easy entry. The next thing I want to tell you about that you're going to see across the conference is, and this is from yesterday, an example from yesterday, is about the ability to answer questions and enter a giveaway, in particular for this, for something separate. And I think it would be fun because it's kind of like a quiz you take throughout the conference. Don't do it now, please, but if you go to your second screen on the map, please, this is the worst thing a speech teacher could ever do is say, let me tell you to look at your phone. So what you do is you just go to the second page, the bottom left, it'll tell you all about it. And so we're just kind of having a little fun. And by the way, going to some of the exhibits will give you lots of opportunities to do this. So let me talk about leadership as a lifelong lesson. If any of you heard about James Kouzes and Postner, we'll just say Kouzes and Postner on all the books they've written. Well, they're my favorite. So I'm sharing with you my favorite books and why. I think these folks are amazing. And the books that they've written, it's James Kouzes and Barry Postner, were written decades ago, right through now. And it's all about leadership. It's very simple. It's easy to follow. But it's also based on hundreds of thousands of surveys that they've done across the world on what makes up a leader. And the very first thing they say is model the way. And then they have others. I'm not going to teach you about this now. I'm telling you about it as a backdrop. But here's what they say, and this is important. Leadership is a set of behaviors and actions. I'll get to that one in a minute, that are available to everyone. Leadership is not a mystical quality or the private reserve of a special class of charismatic people. Charisma helps, but that's not just leadership. It's not a gene or a trait or DNA. It's not a single personality characteristic or a special innate trait. It's not a singular strength. What it is your opportunity to speak up. So, as it says on the slide behind me, the truth is that leadership is an observable set of skills and abilities that are useful whether one is in the chancellor's office, bookstore, library, classroom technology, media services, or student development. That's from their book on leadership for higher education. It's not a title. Leadership can impact your institution when there's constant turnover. Leadership can show, if it turns over, there might be a lack of new ideas encouraged. If somebody else comes in and they don't like, the former ideas. There could be internecine battles. It can impact accreditation if the board is fighting with the president. It could be a lack of vision, conflicting values, unwillingness. But let's talk about what it is, what it really can be. Leadership is about the fact that we have massive turnover going on right now. Look at this, 6.03 years now for CEOs, 4.3 years for chief academic officers, 5.29 years for chief financial officers. So what this says is you better make sure your CFOs aren't the only people who know what's in the data and the budget. Because when they leave, it's hell to pay. And you've got a lot of turnover with this group. But because it's just not about this group, we are studying this group and what it means for what, predictively, for what could happen to an institution. I want to talk to you, and I had fun with this. This is Ken telling me, college president. The next one, typical college president. So he has the Chronicle pose, that you always see in the Chronicle for higher education. The next one is Female plus male college president. Anybody see anything strange in this? She has to wear a suit? Really? Let's go to the next one. Again, male, female. This, I'm like into the second day's worth of my 55 questions. Okay, you got 2 and 2, 3 and 2 actually, getting a little diverse here. But nobody can wear a full graduation gown. They can only put half of one on each of the gender. I'm now really having a long late night talk with Ken. Let's go to the next slide. It's more than a title. And I'm going to get back to what a real leader can look like in a moment. It's your actions. It's how you inspire other people. Learn more, do more, and become more. You are a leader. So I want to give you a little exercise. This is something from HLC. You can try it. You don't have to, but it's a lot of fun. When you meet somebody, especially at a conference, do you notice I kind of look down at your badge? Try not to look at your badge because they're supposed to know you. It's very awkward. But let me ask you this. When you're out and somebody says, so, tell me about yourself. What's the first thing you say? Do you say, I'm a father? I'm a mother? Do you say, I work at Ferris State University, I'm the president? How many of you mention your title? How many of you mention where you work? How many of you say, tell me about yourself, well, I'm actually really good in mathematics, or I'm good in English, or I have a, hey, yay, good for you. Not me, good for you. How many of you are good in writing in English? Do you say that? What this gives you a chance to do is look at yourself differently. And I'd like you to try it at the conference. Go back to your first job. And in your first job, what skills did you learn? Now think for a moment, your very first job. Now imagine you wrote that down, and then you moved it up a level because you didn't forget that. What did you learn in your second job? What skills? What about the next and the next? It can be before you worked professionally. I worked for a family business, and I learned how to manipulate, and I actually put that down. I was very grateful that some of my relatives owned a clothing store, and I got to work there. And I knew exactly when to ask and not to ask, Daddy, I've got a special event. So I actually thought about that, and I said, and then I grew up in Niagara Falls. I worked one summer for a week only. I couldn't stand it when they turned and put up a Cotter Dam and stopped Niagara Falls. And I got to see all the bones, but not the falls, you know, people who had jumped over or animals. What did I learn? I cannot stand working at a place where there's no movement, no action, no life. Okay, so I developed a skill set to deal with that. Now, if you can do it this way, or you can do it the next way. You can take little cards, and you can drop them in a bowl. So today, if you learned anything from anybody today, when was the last skill set you learned? Somebody just shout out a skill set you have. Writing, speaking, math, people. Say that again. Connecting people, absolutely a great skill set. So I would like when you guys walk around during this conference, say, hi, what's your first name? John? I'm John. Let's connect. I've learned how to connect. I have a skill set. Well, don't say it the wrong way. It could be misinterpreted. So. I want to give you this exercise. I want to leave you with this exercise. It's in it's connected to this session. If you want to be promoted, if you're looking for another job, leadership is not a title. Leadership is skill set. Give yourself the credit for all you have done in your careers and present yourself that way when it's appropriate. So I'm going to tell you I asked Ken one more time, and I think you're going to like this. I just said, maybe I'm being too specific. College leader. And look what they sent me. Students. They got that right. I said, thank you, Ken. You got that right. You're the folks who bring them to the point of leadership. You're the folks who have a journey that is very difficult, and you have to get from here to here, and you're not sure you're going to make it some days. So I'm going to leave you with one last piece of advice. When it gets really difficult, trust me, bring out your silver sneakers. Have a great day.